Welcome back to Ask the Lynnwood Cop. I'm Teresa Whipple, and I am here today with Sergeant David Harris, who is from the Lynnwood Police Department and 20 years heading up the traffic section. Boy, I knew I was going to mess that up. Traffic section, is that right?
Actually, I've been with the police department for 20, and I've been in charge of the traffic section for about 11 years now.
Okay, and as you said before, not always people's most favored type of officer to see on the streets, but you know, you do important work, and we're going to talk about that today.
Great.
So, an aggressive driving campaign that you're going to be launching soon. Tell me more about that.
Well, we were looking at some crash statistics in our city, and we've noticed that last year, for example, in 2017, we had 1,529 collisions, which is an average of 127 a month. I think a lot of our commuters know that when they get stuck in traffic, they always kind of wonder why, and they see the flashing lights, and there's usually an accident in front of them, which causes us a little time delay. This year alone, I looked at some numbers, and again, we were up at 284 already since January.
Wow.
So when I started looking at some of the reasons and the causing factors of those accidents, distracted driving seems to be the predominant cause of these accidents.
Not a surprise, right?
And also we noticed that about 40% of these accidents are happening on Highway 99 and on 526, which I'm sure to our community is probably not a surprise either as well, because two main thoroughfares through the city.
And that's 196 for people who don't pay attention to what the highway number is, right?
That's correct, 196, yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Uh-huh.
So I decided we got to do something to try to get these numbers down, which helps the flow of traffic, and again, it just kind of helps people get from one end of the city to the other. So we decided to come up with an emphasis program. So we're going to focus on the distracted driving violations, which would be, following too closely, the unsafe lane changes, obviously our cell phone usage, and other things that causes some distractions in the vehicles, which lead to these collisions.
Right, okay. And you explained to me when we were talking before we got started here that there are some measurements that you have in your head when you talk to people about why they may have ended up rear-ending somebody that are very basic kinds of things. Why don't you tell us more about that?
Sure. Time and distance is a big thing. So when we look at time and distance involving accidents, that comes to play as well. For example, on 196th Street, our speed limit is 35 miles per hour. So when we do a little calculation here, if we look at it, we can realize that 35 miles an hour, a car is actually traveling at 51 feet per second. So if you ask somebody, and I would ask you, if you were to send a text in your car, what do you think is your average time that you would send your average text?
Well, and I'm cheating because we talked about this before, but 3 seconds.
Yeah, somewhere between 3 and 5 seconds is a very common answer that I get from people, 3 to 5 seconds. So if you're traveling at that 35 miles an hour or 51 feet per second, and if I look down there at the roadway, or excuse me, at my phone
Right.
for the 3 seconds, I've burned up 153 feet.
Right.
If a car stops in front of me during that 153 feet, I also have to have what's called perception reaction time, which on average is about 1.5 seconds. So again, if I'm at 35 miles an hour, I've just used up another 77 feet of roadway.
Okay.
And now I have to stop my car. And it's not uncommon for us when we get to these rear end collisions, if you will, I'll say, what happened? Well, the car in front of me just suddenly stopped. And the reality is that the car probably stopped in a reasonable amount of time, but by the time they looked up and noticed the accident, they didn't have the time or the distance to be able to stop safely, which then results in some of these accidents that we're seeing.
Okay. And so this campaign starts on March 21st
Yes, ma'am.
and runs through.
And we're going to run it through the 25th of April.
Okay, so be aware of that. And this brings up an interesting point. Of course, there is now a state law that says that you are not supposed to be holding your phone, right?
That is correct.
Has it been your experience in your years doing this that people are changing their behavior as a result of that law?
To some degree. They try to be a little more discreet with it now, because it used to be if they were holding the phone, they wouldn't hold it to their ear. It had to be held to their ear. So we'd see a lot of the different kind of contortions in the car where somebody's holding their phone and then suddenly it slips down in their lap, but they're scratching their face, and those type of things that we see. But yeah, the new law is very clear. You can't have the phone in your hand.
Right.
And legally, without going into the specific definitions, the only thing that you're allowed to use is one finger and one finger swipe.
Yeah.
To activate the device. Anything other than that, if you're holding the phone, looking at it, dialing, browsing, is a violation of the law.
Okay. I guess the bottom line is it's still really hard for people to put away their phones.
It's difficult, and I don't think it's something that's going to change really quickly, but because for sometimes people think they have to have that need for that instant communication.
Yeah.
And in my experience, as I said, going to so many of these accidents, and unfortunately with some of the more serious ones, the injury accidents, you ask yourself, was that text or was that phone call that important, that you had to have right now, which resulted in, some of our kids getting hit on bicycles, some of our bicyclists being hit, skateboarders, we're coming into summertime.
Yeah.
The skateboarders are gonna come out, the little razor scooters and all those things that are coming out of the side streets. So we're really hoping that people could kind of set that phone down and not take that text, pay attention to the car and they're driving while they're driving the car. And then, hopefully we can get some of these accidents down and maybe save a child from being bumped. And again, I'm not trying to say that we're having a lot of major injury accidents, but still, when a child gets hurt or somebody gets injured in an accident, even if it's a broken arm, broken leg, to a child and to a parent, that's a pretty severe incident to go through.
Yeah, and of course, the potential for something worse is something that we want to avoid.
And it does happen.
Yeah, okay, well, very good. So just a reminder, this specific campaign is running from March 21st through April 25th, so be aware of that and drive safe, right?
Yep, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll be back soon with another episode of Ask the Lynnwood Cop.